Appearance and Reality. A metaphysical essay by F. H. Bradley, Doctor of Laws, Glasgow, Book 1. Appearance. Chapter 1. Primary and Secondary Qualities. The fact of illusion and error is in various ways forced early upon the mind, and the ideas by which we try to understand the universe may be considered as attempts to set right our failure. In this division of my work I shall criticize some of these, and shall endeavor to show that they have not reached their object. I shall point out that the world, as so understood, contradicts itself, and is therefore appearance, and not reality. In this chapter one will begin with the proposal to make things intelligible by the distinction between primary and secondary qualities. This view is old, but, I need hardly say, is far from obsolete, nor can it ever disappear. From time to time, without doubt, so long as there are human beings, it will reappear as the most advanced and as the one scientific theory of first principles. And I begin with it, because it is so simple, and in the main so easily disposed of. The primary qualities are those aspects of what we perceive or feel, which, in a word, are spatial, and the residue is secondary. The solution of the world's enigma lies in taking the former as reality, and everything else somehow as derivative, and as more or less justifiable appearance. The foundation of this view will be known to the reader, but for the sake of clearness I must trace it in outline. We assume that a thing must be self-consistent and self-dependent. It either has a quality or has not got it. And, if it has it, it cannot have it only sometimes, and merely in this or that relation. But such a principle is the condemnation of secondary qualities. It matters very little how in detail we work with it. A thing is colored, but not colored in the same way to every eye, and, except to some eye, it seems not colored at all. Is it then colored or not? And the eyed relation to which appears somehow to make the quality, does that itself possess color? Clearly not so, unless there is another eye which sees it. Nothing therefore is really colored. Color seems only to belong to what itself is colorless. And the same result holds, again, with cold and heat. A thing may be cold or hot according to different parts of my skin, and, without some relation to a skin, it seems without any such quality. And, by a like argument, the skin is proved not itself to own the quality, which is hence possessed by nothing. And sounds, not heard, are hardly real, while what hears them is the ear, itself not audible, nor even always in the enjoyment of sound. With smell and with taste the case seems almost worse, for they are more obviously mixed up with our pleasure and pain. If a thing tastes only in the mouth, is taste its quality? Has it smell where there is no nose? But nose and tongue are smelt or tasted only by another nose or tongue, nor can either again be said to have as a quality what they sometimes enjoy. And the pleasant and disgusting, which we boldly locate in the object, how can they be there? Is a thing delightful or sickening really and in itself? Am even I the constant owner of these wandering adjectives? But I will not weary the reader by insistence on detail. The argument shows everywhere that things have secondary qualities only for an organ, and that the organ itself has these qualities in no other way. They are found to be adjectives, somehow supervening on relations of the extended. The extended only is real. And the facts of what is called subjective sensation, under which we may include dream and delusion of all kinds, may be adduced in support. They go to show that, as we can have the sensation without the object, and the object without the sensation, the one cannot possibly be a quality of the other. The secondary qualities, therefore, are appearance, coming from the reality, which itself has no quality but extension. This argument has two sides, a negative and a positive. The first denies that secondary qualities are the actual nature of things. The second goes on to make an affirmation about the primary. I will inquire first if the negative assertion is justified. I will not dispute the truth of the principle that, if a thing has a quality, it must have it, but I will ask whether on this basis some defense may not be made. And we may attempt it in this way. All the arguments, we may protest, do but show defect in, or interference with, the organ of perception. The fact that I cannot receive the secondary qualities except under certain conditions fails to prove that they are not there and existing in the thing. And, supposing that they are there, still the argument proves their absence, and is hence unsound. And sheer delusion and dreams do not overthrow this defense. The qualities are constant in the things themselves, and, if they fail to impart themselves, or impart themselves wrongly, that is always due to something outside their nature. If we could perceive them, they are there. But this way of defense seems hardly tenable. For, if the qualities impart themselves never except under conditions, how in the end are we to say what they are when unconditioned? Having once in, and having been compelled, to take their appearance into the account, we cannot afterwards strike it out. It being admitted that the qualities come to us always in a relation, and always as appearing, then certainly we know them only as appearance. And the mere supposition that in themselves they may really be what they are, seems quite meaningless or self-destructive. Further, we may enforce this conclusion by a palpable instance. To hold that one's mistress is charming, ever and in herself, is an article of faith, and beyond reach of question. But, if we turn to common things, the result will be otherwise. We observe that the disgusting and the pleasant may make part of the character of a taste or a smell, while to take these aspects as a constant quality either of the thing or of the organ seems more than unjustifiable, and even almost ridiculous. And on the whole we must admit that the defense is broken down. The secondary qualities must be judged to be merely appearance. But are they the appearance of the primary, and are these the reality? The positive side of the contention was that in the extended we have the essence of the thing, and it is necessary to ask if this conclusion is true. The doctrine is, of course, materialism, and is a very simple creed. What is extended, together with its spatial relations, is substantive fact, and the rest is adjectival. We have not to ask here if this view is scientific, in the sense of being necessarily used for work in some sciences. That has, of course, nothing to do with the question now before us, since we are inquiring solely whether the doctrine is true. And, regarded in this way, perhaps no student would call materialism scientific. I will indicate briefly the arguments against the sole reality of primary qualities. In the first place, we may ask how, in the nature of the extended, the terms stand to the relations which have to hold between them. This is a problem to be handled, and I will only remark here that its result is fatal to materialism. And, b. in the second place, the relation of the primary qualities to the secondary, in which class feeling and thought have presumably to be placed, seems wholly unintelligible. For nothing is actually removed from existence by being labeled appearance. What appears is there, and must be dealt with, but materialism has no rational way of dealing with appearance. Appearance must belong, and yet cannot belong, to the extended. It neither is able to fall somewhere apart, since there is no other real place, nor ought it, since, if so, the relation would vanish and appearance would cease to be derivative. But, on the other side, if it belongs in any sense to the reality, how can it be shown not to infect that with its own unreal character? Or we may urge that matter must cease to be itself, if qualified essentially by all that is secondary. But, taken otherwise, it has become itself but one out of two elements, and is not the reality. And, thirdly, the line of reasoning which showed that secondary qualities are not real has equal force as applied to primary. The extended comes to us only by relation to an organ, and, whether the organ is touch or is sight or muscle feeling, or whatever else it may be, makes no difference to the argument. For, in any case, the thing is perceived by us through an affection of our body, and never without that. And our body itself is no exception, for we perceive that, as extended, solely by the action of one part upon another percipient part. That we have no miraculous intuition of our body as spatial reality is perfectly certain. But, if so, the extended thing will have its quality only when perceived by something else, and the percipient something else is again in the same case. Nothing, in short, proves extended except in relation to another thing, which itself does not possess the quality, if you try to take it by itself. And, further, the objection from dream and delusion holds again. That objection urges that error points to a necessary relation of the object to our knowledge, even where error is not admitted. But such a relation would reduce every quality to appearance. We might, indeed, attempt once more here to hold the former line of defense. We might reply that the extended thing is a fact real by itself, and that only its relation to our percipients is variable. But the inevitable conclusion is not so to be averted. If a thing is known to have a quality only under a certain condition, there is no process of reasoning from this which will justify the conclusion that the thing, if unconditioned, is yet the same. This seems quite certain, and, to go further, if we have no other source of information, if the quality in question is non-existent for us except in one relation, then for us to assert its reality away from that relation is more than unwarranted. It is, to speak plainly, an attempt in the end without meaning. And it would seem that, if materialism is to stand, it must somehow get to the existence of primary qualities in a way which avoids their relation to an organ. But since, as we shall hereafter see, their very essence is relative, even this refuge is closed. But there is a more obvious argument against the sole reality of spatial qualities, and, if I were writing for the people an attack upon materialism, I should rest great weight on this point. Without secondary quality extension is not conceivable, and no one can bring it, as existing, before his mind if he keeps it quite pure. In short, it is the violent abstraction of one aspect from the rest, and the mere confinement of our attention to a single side of things, a fiction which, forgetting itself, takes a ghost for solid reality. And I will say a few words on this obvious answer to materialism. That doctrine, of course, holds that the extended can be actual, entirely apart from every other quality. But extension is never so given. If it is visual, it must be colored, and if it is tactual, or acquired in the various other ways which may fall under the head of the muscular sense, then it is never free from sensations, coming from the skin, or the joints, or the muscles, or, as some would like to add, from a central source. And a man may say what he likes, but he cannot think of extension without thinking at the same time of a what that is extended. And not only is this so, but particular differences, such as up and down, right and left, are necessary to the terms of the spatial relation. But these differences clearly are not merely spatial. Like the general what, they will consist in all cases of secondary quality from a sensation of the kinds I have mentioned above. Some psychologists, indeed, could go further, and could urge that the secondary qualities are original, and the primary derivative, since extension is a construction or growth from the wholly non-extended. I could not endorse that, but I can appeal to what is indisputable. Extension cannot be presented, or thought of, except as one with quality that is secondary. It is by itself a mere abstraction, for some purposes necessary, but ridiculous when taken as an existing thing. Yet the materialist, from defect of nature or of education, or probably both, worships without justification this thin product of his untutored fancy. Not without justification, he may reply, since in the procedure of science the secondary qualities are explained as results from the primary. Obviously, therefore, these latter are independent and prior. But this is a very simple error. For suppose that you have shown that, given one element, A, another, B, does in fact follow on it. Suppose that you can prove that becomes just the same, whether A is a or C attended by C, or D, or E, or any one of a number of other qualities. You cannot go from this to the result that A exists and works naked. The secondary B can be explained, you urge, as issuing from the primary A, without consideration of aught else. Let it be so. But all that could follow is, that the special natures of A's accompaniments are not concerned in the process. There is not only no proof, but there is not even the very smallest presumption, that A could act by itself, or could be a real fact if alone. It is doubtless scientific to disregard certain aspects when we work. But to urge that therefore such aspects are not fact, and that what we use without regard to them is an independent real thing, this is barbarous metaphysics. We have found then that, if the secondary qualities are appearance, the primary are certainly not able to stand by themselves. This distinction, from which materialism is blindly developed, has been seen to bring us no nearer to the true nature of reality.